I'm with Train PD, do our own training and trainer events for Best Plus in our state, using Glenda as one of the trainers. She works for Community Action, and goodness, I think she's been in adult ed, I don't know, many years. And then we have Karen Cook with Austin Community College. She is a certified Best Plus trainer, and she's been with Austin Community College and for 7 years has managed their assessment needs. And Austin's a large program. They have a great system in place for testing, and they've already started working on their SOPs to do remote testing with Best Plus. So I am happy to have both of you here today, and I am ready to turn this over to Glenda Rose. Dr. Rose, if you would like to share your screen, I will stop sharing mine.
I don't actually think you have a choice once I start sharing.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. You took it away. Thanks, Glenda. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, everybody. We're going to talk about remote testing with Best Plus. We can only do Best Plus. Clearly, we do not have authority to do Best Literacy, so we are only talking about Best Plus this morning. We're going to go over the guidelines, the guidance from OCTAE, the Office for Career, Technical, and Adult Education, and also from our TWC, Texas Workforce Commission Adult Education and Literacy Department. We're going to look at the virtual test administration guidance for Best Plus from the Center for Applied Linguistics, CAL. So if you hear me say CAL, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about moo cows. And things, we're going to alternate. So I will be going over rules and regulations, yay. And then Karen will start talking about how they have been using the guidance to develop their SOPs, things that they've had to think about. And I might jump in from a smaller program, things that we might need to think about with a small rural area program. Okay. And then if we have time at the end, we hope to do a little demo and have time for your questions. So let's talk about OCTAE first. OCTAE gave a memorandum that basically just says in question 7, I think, right here, distance learning stays the same. Okay, here we go. Additionally, states may choose to develop procedures to implement testing, virtual test proctoring. And I have kind of summarized that by just saying it's student identity, an approved test, and a trained proctor. That is pretty much their guidance to the states. Not all states are allowing virtual test proctoring. Some are just not doing any testing right now. But we in Texas have decided to go forward with virtual test proctoring, and we will follow the guidance from OCTAE. We'll be able to verify our student's identity, use an approved test, and make sure the proctors are trained not only on the test, but on how to administer it online. So then we have some guidelines from the Texas Workforce Commission. Theirs came out in a letter. If you want to share those letters in the chat again, if it's shareable. And basically, the important part here is standard operating procedures. So before you can actually start testing students, you are going to need to have a standard operating procedure in place for how that's going to happen. And I'm sure, I guess I could have you guys raise hands, but I am sure in this group, a group this large, that we have a wide variety of people in here. I'm sure we have administrators, I'm sure we have teachers, and I'm sure we have people who are proctors and teams people. So as we're going through the guidelines, some of this may or may not apply to you. You may not be the person developing the standard operating procedures, but I think it helps to know how they're being developed, what guidelines are being given for the development of those procedures. The remote testing guidelines from TWC, the SOP has to talk about test security, test integrity, and the protection of personally identifiable information. So in addition to the guidelines from OCTAE, they want to make sure that the tests stay secure and that they are valid and that we're not putting our students at risk by exposing their personally identifiable information. They confirm from OCTAE, TWC adopted that you must be certified and trained to administer the specific assessment. So if you were not already trained to administer the Best Plus, you cannot administer the Best Plus online until you are trained in the Best Plus. And that's not a quick training. More guidance from TWC. We have to be able to verify the student identity. That comes from OCTAE. But they added that we need to orient students. and that has to do with test integrity. We need to make sure, as Tracy did this morning, going through how things work in Zoom, we need to make sure that our students understand what's going to happen in the testing situation and how we are going to interact. We also need to do a tech check with them, make sure that they have the proper equipment, they have the connectivity that they need. And then you see my atom bomb exploding on the laptop. I'm sure that has never happened to you. Well, I've only had one catch on fire. But you always have something go wrong with tech. It just never fails. Tech is great until it fails, and it will always fail when you need it the most. So you also, in the SOP, we need, according to TWC, to have a backup plan for what to do and explain to the student what to expect if something goes wrong. What is the plan B if something happens during the test that they're not able to complete it? They have a few more guidelines, and these are very important. You have to have controlled entry to the test. That is going to play into how you determine what kind of platform to use. You also have to do an environment check, and we'll talk more about that. And they're recommending, especially for the Best Plus, that you use headsets to get the best audio quality. It's not a requirement, but you want to recommend it if possible. Karen?
Hi. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Karen Cook, and I handle all the assessment needs for Austin Community College. And right now, we are in the midst of trying to plan for the last 2 weeks a new SOP with our virtual testing guidelines. And as Tracy had mentioned too, Glenda is going over all the guidance from TWC and Best Plus. And I'm just going to try to break down things that we have run into as we're setting up our SOP, questions that we needed to ask, solutions that we have come up with that we're still working on, and just so that maybe you can get ideas of how your program needs to address issues. And the first one would be technology. You know, how will your program incorporate technology and handle technical problems and unexpected disruptions during testing? One thing that I found was we first needed to view all the virtual platforms and see that the platform that matched with what we wanted to do at ACC. And our thing is everyone has to have a secured entry point, but we also wanted to do like a main room where there was a moderator, kind of like a virtual line keeper or crowd controller. And then we would be sending them into breakout rooms to do the testing. So however your process is, you need to make sure that those options are available in the platform that you choose. We're a large program, so we're trying to test people more than a one-on-one basis, and we were looking at different ways to do that. The other thing that I would say is you need to check your bandwidth. You know, as a test administrator, you need to make sure that you have adequate bandwidth. One thing I found in this virtual world, I was downloading a big file and I was like, it's taking forever. And I realized that I also had a place to hardwire in at my home. So even as a test administrator, maybe that would be something that you could do for good connection. And then what's gonna happen? How are you gonna handle technical problems? I think part of our process is we're going to confirm on testing day their email and remind them that if they have a problem, we will wait to see if they can reconnect. If not, we will email them and have them reschedule their testing event. That needs to be in your process. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Some programs could use the WhatsApp or Remind, or if you have phone numbers, you know, our program is large, so we usually will communicate with them through an email. And finally, another thing that we ran into is we have testing laptops that have the Best Plus software on them. And I got a note saying, hey, we're closing the campuses. It's going to be hard to get in. And I realized that my software for Best Plus was there too. So make sure in this virtual world that you have access to the Best Plus software, that all your test administrators and instructors have it installed and that it's not locked up where you can't reach it. Thanks.
Karen, I have a quick question from Oscar, and it's a good question. would you be willing to share your SOP template for virtual testing so that programs could just type in the key elements? Would you be willing to share your template and I could put it in the assessments community of practice under Best Plus?
Yeah, we can do that. Honestly, right now, we've been working on it for about 2 weeks now, and we're fine tuning things, and we're going to start training. We call them like moderators that are in our main rooms and stuff. And I would, we're not totally have it written yet, but once we do, we will definitely share it. We want to practice and kind of work out the kinks, and then we're going to be setting that up. But yes.
Well, and I'm not sure that they want your whole process, but just perhaps the template that you're using with the subheadings that would help them address things.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
I'm sure they're asking just for your, okay.
Definitely.
It says remind FERPA security, which others do not have. And that may be about the laptops. I'm not sure.
I think it's about when you use WhatsApp in a group,
Okay.
that you can see the other people's phone numbers if they're not in your contact list. So that would be, if they're not already in a class group, it would be a violation.
Right.
You can also use,
I don't use Remind that much, so I don't know all the, but yeah.
and you can also use
Great, thanks.
items like Mighty Text where you're doing individual text, but they're, when you get a group text, you're sending it to a group, but they're getting the text individually, so they're not sharing their phone number. So there's other ways to do it. Okay. Now Cal put out the Best Plus 2.0 virtual tag, and I wanted to show you this. This is on the TCAL page. Actually, if you go to the main TCAL page, the Texas Center for the Advancement of Literacy and Learning, which is our professional development people, the front page has this COVID-19 and distance education updates. There are some great things for students if you're a teacher, but if you go here to the AEL providers.
We're not seeing your screen, Glenda. We're just seeing the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
How's that?
There we go. Got it.
Thank you for letting me know. So this is what I was talking about. So you're going to click here for AEL providers, and my dog's going to start barking right about now. So the remote testing guidance chart is right here. So if you're interested in what the other tests are doing, they're keeping it updated. We've talked to just about everybody and what they're doing. Cal has a frequently asked questions chart, and one of the things that they tell you is that if you decide to do the virtual testing, they will send you the virtual test guide. The virtual test guide looks like this. If you are a proctor, you should probably have already gotten this. We're going to go over this step by step anyway. So part of their guidance is, for the integrity of the test, they want to make sure that you're using video technology that most closely reflects face-to-face conditions. So right now, for example, all you're seeing is my screen, you're not seeing me. This is not going to be face-to-face conditions. You would need to see my video. My video would have to be on. The student's video will have to be on. So you have to have a video connection, and that could be problematic, but you can figure ways around it. The other thing is you cannot do this just as an audio only format. You can't just do it on the phone. There's lots of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that English language learners find it very difficult for listening without any kind of visual cues. So that would definitely invalidate your test results because you're adding another layer of ability for the English language learner. They also recommend using 2 devices. So you would have your Best Plus program running on one device and you're doing the video conferencing on another device. Me personally, I use 2 monitors. So I have it running on one screen and this conversation with the student on this main screen, and then I can bring over those prompts. In the Best Plus, if you haven't done it in a while, you can remember that one of the first things is tell me about this picture, and you have to actually turn your laptop so that they can see the picture. So when you're in the virtual world, you're going to have to bring that picture over into view for the student, and so you want to make sure that you have the ability to get them that picture. You can skip the picture. You can just not score it, and they won't be penalized for it. It is a recommendation, it's not a requirement. You can certainly just share that picture on one device when you come to that question, but you will need to be able to do very quickly, share your screen, share the picture, and then turn it back off because they need to be seeing you most of the time. Again, students must use a video-enabled device. If they do not have video, they cannot take the Best Plus virtually. This is more guidance. If you see BP on the slide, that's Best Plus. That's trying to for me to remember if this was something we came up with or them. They came up with a bunch of questions talking about platforms, which Karen's alluded to already. How do you decide what platforms to use? Now, again, I realize in a group of 265 people, not everybody here is going to be making that decision. But for those of you who are, you need to ask yourself some questions about the capabilities of the student to access the platform. There are some that are web-based and they don't have to install anything. There's others that they have to actually install an app. If they do have to install, who's going to be helping them with that if they have trouble with that? My biggest problem with my English language learners in my ESL classes is when I ask them to install an app and they're on iPhone, they don't know, their children set it up, they don't know what their passwords are to get into the App Store. So there's all kinds of little things like that that can come up. And do they have to register or log in? Also, the free version of Zoom, for example, has a time limit of 40 minutes. And that sounds like more than enough time for your computer, for your test. I'm sorry, Melanie turned on her camera and it distracted me. So you can think about usually best is 10 to 20 minutes. It doesn't usually take that long. But if you have to do all of this orienting the student ahead of time and scanning the environment and making sure they can use the technology and discussing what to do if something goes wrong, and have time to get them to relax after you stress them out talking about all that, it may go into that 40-minute time limit. Also, some of the platforms are more demanding on bandwidth. So for my program, which is rural, that doesn't work. Most of my students have to go outside to use their devices that are out of the city limits. So you need to think about those kinds of things too. That can cause a challenge. I also have teachers who are in the same situation that live out in the county, and they cannot participate in our online classes because they do not have the kind of bandwidth that can support it. So those are things that you should be asking yourselves as you're looking for platforms.
Linda, real quick, I just wanted a couple of comments here. We got a question. Have you researched which digital platforms like Zoom or WebEx are best for administration? Thoughts on that?
So that's going to be a program decision. As long as they meet the minimum requirements that you can control access and bring people in one at a time. My students seem to find Zoom easier to use, plus it's a lot cheaper. It's $15 a month per host. So if I have,
I think we like Zoom for the quality, for the audio and visual quality as well.
And the ease of access, it's very easy to use on a phone. WebEx allows, there's a lot of them. So Karen's going to talk about all of these actually have controlled access.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So there's a lot of platforms that you can use. One is Blackboard Collaborate. ACC, that's the platform that they have with the credit side. I'm not too familiar with Microsoft Teams, Zoom, BlueJeans, WebEx, GoToMeeting, Adobe Connect. The main thing when you're looking at these platforms, like Tracy or like Glenda had said, is we look to see what would be the ease of access for our students. Do they have to download? Can they connect on a link? I guess, and bandwidth is important. They have to have a waiting room. You cannot use Google Hangouts because there's not a waiting room where you can do a controlled entry. And that's important for security reasons, and TWC and Best Plus both require that. So again, you need to play around with all these platforms. That's what we did. And we preferred Zoom, but that's just for what we were doing. And that might not be the same for your program, but that's on the platforms.
And I wanted to add on the Google Hangout. Some of you may be educators in the K-12 world, and they do have a waiting room extension, but it does not allow controlled access in that you can let students in one at a time if you need to. It's whether or not they can enter the room when it's not open. So that does not qualify for the controlled access.
Okay, so another thing we've been working on the SOP at Austin Community College is training. And I feel like we just got done training all of our instructors to go virtual, and I haven't yet told them they're going to be training now to test and assess virtually. But we'll probably be using the same thing we're doing here. We're going to use a Google Slide. We're working on that as we speak and send that out to our staff, our test administrators, and our instructors. We're going to set up practice groups. And here we need to practice as both the test administrator and as the student, because you want to practice on all different devices, with whether it's an iPhone, a tablet, a laptop. You need to visually see what the student is seeing and the problems that they have, because when you're doing this, then you're better able to solve their tech issues. So at ACC, we are going to set up a lot of training within staff and administrators, and practice testing as both a student and a test administrator. Also, we're thinking about creating some kind of script. You know, I'm not sure if we'll do that for questions, and follow a script to make sure that all these regulations and guidelines that Glenda's going to be talking about in a little bit, that they're included in our script. And the one thing that I think is important is when it comes to the SOP, that everyone in your program is aware of what your processes are. And I think we strive to communicate that at ACC to all our people and get everyone involved in our assessment process. And so I think to be successful, that, you know, that everyone has access to your SOP when it comes to all the processes you're using for this virtual assessment. And we will also make sure that they have that access.
Sorry, I was looking at questions. Okay.
Like,
So I was thinking about the WhatsApp, because I use WhatsApp a lot, and I would have to really think through that because of its saving, it automatically saves conversations. So I think that might be a security risk for the test. I don't think that would be a good option. Plus, you would have to hold up, you couldn't scan the picture and send it to them as an image. That would definitely be a security violation. You'd have to hold the picture up, and that would maybe be very difficult to do on WhatsApp.
are they talking about using that as a platform?
Yeah, I don't think that would work.
Yeah, I don't think that follows. Yeah, no.
It's a good thought. I just had to think through it for a minute and realize it's some security breach.
I thought you could use that if you needed to contact them again, if you had technical issues.
Oh, definitely. For contact, it's fine. But for testing, it would expose us to security breach.
Wow.
Zoom, and somebody's already answered about Zoom in Spanish. Okay. And I think that's it. Were there any other questions I missed, Tracy?
No, not that I see.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So back to Best Plus's guidelines here. One of the most important things you can do is practice, and you need to practice both as an administrator and as a student. So you could set your proctors or your teachers up who are administering the test in teams so that they can practice with one another, just like you do in the original Best Plus training, to get used to the format. Also practicing on different devices. Again, I was thinking about the WhatsApp thing because I mostly use WhatsApp. I've got it turned off now so it doesn't interrupt me, but I mostly use it on my desktop, and on the desktop version, there's no camera, so I couldn't use it there either. So you need to think about what's it going to look like on an iPad or a Samsung Galaxy tablet or a phone or a computer. So those are concerns that you need to think about as far as the testing goes. One of my concerns about doing it on their phones is the pictures, because they will have to pinch in and pinch out really to see those pictures, and that may be difficult for some of them. Then practice sharing your screen. It should be seamless. You should not be fumbling around to get back and forth to the screen and to the picture. And practice from different locations. This is again for us that are in areas where we have low bandwidth or no bandwidth or still on satellite phones. You may find that those students may not qualify to be tested unless they drive to a McDonald's parking lot or something like that. And Denise is asking about the large programs. You can't do Best Plus other than one-on-one, Denise. And that's a good question that we're considering for CASAS. But for Best Plus, it's a one-on-one interview every time. But she's talking about how she's managing it. I think we can even have a graphic later, right, Karen?
Yeah, I can share a graph later. And basically, we are testing one-on-one in a private room, but we are giving we're going to talk about that later on. So I'll let you continue. But yeah. We're using breakout rooms, yes.
So this is part of the thing about determining, and I want to pull that up. So you start talking, Karen. I'm going to see if I can pull this up for you, your example.
Oh, my example. Well, I know different programs have different needs. And for us, we in the summer can test literally thousands of ESL students. So we were thinking if we wanted to test like 60 a day, how would we do that virtually? So we're having like teams, and they'll be like in Zoom, the main person is the moderator in the main room. And then that moderator will send students to breakout rooms. We're going to start with just 2 testers per moderator. So they're going to come into that room. We're going to review all the requirements, the tech, go over some things, and then send them to their breakout room that's where it's secure. They'll show their ID and they'll start their testing. And we do that because they sign up for a testing schedule, like maybe 9 o'clock, and that correlates to a link, and then we send them that link. So we're trying to flow a lot of people through at one time, and we do those testing events maybe, like it was on July 15th. Oh, here's the example, yeah. So there's a waiting room when the student joins. The moderator already has a list of the students that were scheduled for that time. And we break that time out, like they might sign up at 9, 9:30. And so they confirm that that person is at the correct time. At that point, we haven't got to this yet, but we'll go over some tech things. What happens if we lose contact with you through Wi-Fi? And then the proctor that's in the breakout room, there's a way to raise your hand. So when they need a student, we send that student to the proctor. And then the proctor there will verify their ID and start the test. And once they've completed, then that student leaves, and then the proctor will raise their hand, and the moderator is funneling students in from this waiting room, and then they go to different proctors. We're also thinking about doing a breakout room for tech support. So if a student has issues with their technology, they can go into that room. So, because sometimes chatter can get loud, if you have 2 people that the moderator's like checking to make sure and sending to different proctors, we thought if someone's really having trouble, that's another option to send them there. And I know this seems really like this is more than maybe a lot of programs will want to do, but again, we do like testing events, and we were trying to figure out how we could take our face-to-face testing event and make it virtual. And we are going to practice this, and this might change some, but this is kind of the process we have now.
Karen, Christopher has a question. Will students go directly from the waiting room to the breakout room, or will students be put into the main room and given some kind of instructions during the wait?
Right, that's what they're doing in the waiting room.
Okay.
When they come in there, we'll have a screen that says you're at the, with some visuals because it's ESL, but we're going to have a screen kind of saying you're in the right room, wait, please, the moderator will bring you to this main room. And then in the main room, and we're still working on this process, but I believe in the main room is when we're going to go over kind of like housekeeping things that you did, Tracy. Mm-hmm. And then things like if you lose your Wi-Fi, we'll contact, we'll give you a few minutes to try to rejoin, or we'll contact you by email. If there's any tech problems that are obvious, we're thinking about having another tech support person in another breakout room that we can send them to before we send them to the proctor. Because when we send them to the breakout room to the proctor, we're trying to keep that testing environment and have that test administrator greet them. And that's where we would identify, show their ID because no one's in that room other than the tester and the test administrator. And then they leave when they're done, and then the proctor can raise their hand, and then the moderator will keep, sending more people there. So we're still testing one-on-one. We're just trying to do it controlled, because when you send links, and we have ways to do that, and I feel like I'm fortunate. I have a really good data team, so they can provide me this information. And the moderator knows everyone who's coming to test, and the proctor will have a pre-filled out, we call them like a Best Plus roster. and that kind of pertains, we'll put their ACC ID, it's pre-filled out, their name, their score, we'll enter their score, if they were a top out, the things that pertain to our program.
Great.
The proctor has access to that. So we're controlling, we know who's going into these testing sessions.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
So before the student comes into the session, another thing that you might want to do is give them links to how to use Zoom. As you were saying, there are some Spanish ones and there's other languages as well.
Yeah.
I found that I needed to create a little video for my students for the classes, because what they really didn't know how to do was to swipe left and right to find everything, or how to find their toolbars. And so we just created a little video for them. Housekeeping slides, like you saw at the beginning of this video. And then Karen actually has this one, step-by-step instructions with screenshots, which is another way to do it.
Yeah.
But you need to have that set up ahead of time. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and say, this is by far for me, the hardest one to do SOP wise, is how we can capture our students. We have returning students and new students. Returning students have kind of been in the virtual world now, but the new students, with technology. And for us, we do an online application, but I know a lot of people don't do an online application, but we send them then to a testing link, which is just with Google Forms, and they sign up for that appointment slot. And then when we forward them their link, their unique link for their testing day, we're also going to have information in there, like the mini videos, maybe a YouTube, step-by-step. We're working those out, what we want to include. We also want to include to have your ID ready, because a lot of people will be fumbling for their IDs. So we want to make sure they have their IDs ready. But even if you don't use the Google Forms is a great way to have students sign up if you're thinking about using that. And that was about it. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say we're thinking about doing is, when we send this unique link, we're going to maybe set up an email or a phone number that they can contact us, so they can actually practice before their actual testing date. Because I feel like some people might be nervous about the whole process, and I'm working with, we have some interns, so I'm working with that to see if we can kind of capture as many of these problems before the actual testing date, because that is a concern probably for everyone, how we're going to capture these new students.
Okay. There were a couple of questions. Zoom does allow you to assign specific people to rooms. You can do it randomly, but you do not have to.
Yes.
And was there anything else? How do you deal with students who don't have an email? I think at Austin Community College, when they become a student, they get an Austin Community College email. Is that right?
Yeah, they have an email, and that is a big problem. And that's why I think in that point where the moderator is, we're thinking of having to confirm their emails, because, we get a lot of bad emails.
Right.
Or we can call too. We can get their phone numbers, but that is, but we have access to that when they do their online application. We'll have their phone numbers and their emails. I just like to confirm them because they change, and, that's just one more step we're going to add so we can keep in touch with them. And then also we'll give them an email address. They can email us, or phone numbers. We have a live chat. So we can do a lot of that.
There's other ways to communicate with them.
There's other ways. Yeah.
You're stuck with email.
Yeah.
All right. Provide clear. So I'm going to continue because we're getting close to our time. I can't believe it's already 10:45. So again, what we were just talking about, Best Plus Cal wants us to make sure that we provide information about the technology, that we help them to install the software if necessary. But here's an important one. With parents with the kids at home, and me with dogs, finding a quiet place and time to take the test. They need 15 to 20 minutes at least to take the test. They need to find out who can watch the kids for that 20 minutes, or if they can go to a room put the kids on the TV so that they can go to another room and take the test. There's those kinds of things too that the student needs to think about where they can go. You also need to make sure that the students know that they cannot record the test so that they can study for it for next time.
Yeah.
They can't take pictures of it with their phone. They can't audio or video record it. The recording options on your platform should be turned off. And then also, again, as they keep saying this, make sure that you give the student instructions on what to do if there's a problem.
Okay, so I'm going to move quickly, but on the SOP security, one of the main thing is make sure, and I think it's TWC's guidelines, and to make sure that there's no recurring links. That it's each student's going to receive a unique testing link to enter there. And that's why the waiting room is very important, and they require that. One thing that we realized when we were doing our SOP is that if you go into whatever platform you have and you see their advanced settings, make sure you review all those settings with all your test administrators, and everyone is setting up their platform the same way. You don't want people to be able to share content, sharing contents, and there's other things I can't think right now, but just make sure that everyone is setting up their platform in the most secure way. And then verifying the identity of your test taker while maintaining their PII. You don't want to be asking, that's why that WhatsApp probably won't work, but you cannot be asking them to show their ID with other students around. So whatever process you have in place, you need to make sure that it's just the test administrator and the student is showing that person the ID. Be careful with that. No audio or visual recording.
Okay, so we do need to verify the student's identity in private. So we don't want to record it. You just want to hold it up, make sure. For me, in a small program, I know all my students, and most of my testers either are teachers or substitutes, and so they know most of the students. So if it's a post-test, it can be a visual verification of the identity. But if it's a new student or a student that I don't know, then we'll need to see that ID. Again, the non-shareable links, that doesn't mean that you can't send one link to 300 people like we did today and then put them in the breakout rooms. It does mean that you can't reuse that same link. So when you're setting up, for example, on Zoom, you have the option of using your personal room link. You do not want to do that because that link doesn't change. And you want one that's different every time you have a testing session. Yeah. Also, just like the students, we have to find a place to test that we're not going to get interrupted. My phone is off right now. That's something you might want to think about telling the students if they're not using the phone for testing. And we are not allowed to video or audio record the test session either. Here's a couple of more things from Best Plus. When the proctor starts, they verified the ID, they've greeted the student, they verified the ID. One of the things they're going to say is, I need you to take your phone or device or camera and show me the room that you're in. You need to look for entrances and exits. You need to look to make sure there's not things on the desk that would be helpful during the test. So you try to keep them from cheating that way. Also, just verifying that this is a good environment. If it is not a good environment for the test, then you are not going to give the test. You're going to have to ask them to reschedule. If a tech issue arises during a prompt, normally when we do the prompts and we score it, the first section of the scoring is the listening section, and it's 0, 1, or 2. And if we have to repeat the question, then we automatically go down to a 1. So in the situation, if the audio or the video is what caused the request to repeat, because we all have had that experience on a phone where it chunks up like that, we do not have to take the point off. We can repeat the question. If the call disconnects, your choices are you resume immediately, and that's why you need to have a backup communication method for your student. If you are not able to resume immediately, unfortunately, you'll need to reschedule the test and you'll have to start the test from the beginning.
Okay, so how will you start the remote testing process? And it's just like in your face-to-face, you're going to greet your student, put them at ease. I guess the main part when you're writing your SOP is when are you going to address all the issues below, as they're coming in. Like for us, we might do it in the moderator room and not have the proctor do that, but ensure that, check the environment, ensure the sound quality. I think the most important one here is remind the student what to do if tech fails, and make sure that all your test administrators are asking these same questions and putting their student at ease. That's the main thing here. And yeah, I think the main thing would be what happens if your tech fails and making sure that you have good sound quality. So, Glenda?
Okay.
Oh, it's me again.
Yes.
How will you get the scores to the person who processes them? Because I believe here, as we move to the virtual world, the way you process your data maybe has changed. Maybe your instructor would print the score report and put it in a file. So maybe all of this has changed now since we're like working remotely. It has for us. And you need to be thinking about that as well in your SOP. We are, we do all of ours electronically. So we're going to be sharing a secure drive for all our test administrators and instructors. And that's where they're going to be putting the files or the scores into, so that our data team can access them and process them. I know not everyone keeps their scores electronically, but you can, save your score report in a PDF and send it to a file as well, so that your data person can process this information. So you just need to think through how you currently are managing your scores and how that's going to move forward in this virtual testing world.
We do have a question. I know we're going to be at questions here in just a minute, but what could be a non-proper environment? This is from Angela. So
they scan the room and there's 5 other family members in there and they're all eating breakfast and watching TV.
Yeah.
So it's got to be, you've got to think about it. Are they going to be able to concentrate on the test without being distracted? Or are there other things in the room that could cause problems?
And it is a listening test, so you would think they would want to be in a quiet place, because then you're not going to have an accurate score if they can't hear.
And then Mike wants to know if students are more relaxed or more nervous with remote testing. I think it's about the same. The students I've tested so far had about the same level of nervousness as I usually see in the class. I think that's but then again, my students have been coming to class on Zoom and we're doing the testing on Zoom. So it may depend on how comfortable they are with the technology as well.
Yeah, and I fear that new students are going to be, more uncomfortable with that process because they're not as used to the technology yet.
Yeah, and if we have to keep this up for a while, that probably will die off too, because almost everybody is using some sort of video conferencing right now to connect with work or churches or, music or anything like that. So that may become less and less of a problem. I'm still very much concerned about the digital divide for the students who don't have bandwidth.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, well, we only have about 5 minutes, so I guess I don't have any time for the crowdsourced problem solving, but that community of practice that Tracy's going to have for us, that's going to be a great place to say, hey, we ran into this problem. How do you think we should solve it?
Yes, that would be awesome, Tracy.
And I'll post all of the materials we talked about. And Karen, someone asked if you could share that, your graphic of the waiting room, the waiting room, the proctor rooms. That was a great graphic. If you could send that to me, I'll post that as well.
Okay.
Just for an idea. And I'll post the link for the YouTube. And Glenda shared it right there. And I'll post the link for Glenda's YouTube. And someone did ask, Mike asked, are you finding that people are more comfortable or more relaxed and comfortable with remote testing as opposed to face-to-face?
I think I answered that. Yeah.
Did you? Okay. And your answer was?
That's what we were talking about. My students are already used to Zoom, so I'm not seeing that they're any more nervous. I am concerned about students who may not have had any experience using video chat.
Got it.
So that could be a problem, but that's one of the reasons why you want to orient the students well before you start the test. One of the recommendations is to do that orientation possibly a day before so they can get comfortable with it before they actually have to take the test. But that's just a recommendation, and I probably wouldn't do that because I don't want to schedule 2 appointments. Okay.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, finding the staff to do that too is difficult.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to make sure your staff are comfortable with this. So you may need to practice with your staff that are certified Best Plus testers first. Tara's asking a question. Can proctors who need, sorry, that moved up. I lost it.
I see it. I got it.
Do you see it?
Yeah, from Tara. Can proctors who need a refresher in Best Plus 2.0 administer remote testing? Not until they've had their refresher, because they're out of compliance. So you would have to do a refresher with them, and you probably could do the refresher virtually. That wouldn't be too difficult. But then after they had their updated credentials, then yes, they could do it.
So Crystal is asking, is it possible to meet with a new student a day before and explain the process of testing to cut down on time on the day of testing, explaining what they need to do?
That's an option,
Yeah.
and I think that's like a program decision, I mean,
Right.
if you have the ability to meet with that student before and test all their technology and, try to minimize problems, I feel like that's ideal. It just depends on your program. I'm actually trying to think of working out something where students can call in and set an appointment to do that. Maybe not all the students, but students that I will give them that option. Again, having to find the staff and the time, but I'm trying to look into that.
Right. Right. You could do like little orientations, I guess, pre-test orientations. That would be a way, informational session type of thing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we could do that as well.
Yeah. And so, and I think every program may look a little bit different. I think I posted this in the chat pod that your process may look a little different from other programs. It's got to follow TWC and Cal guidance as long as you make sure all those issues are covered, but it may look different depending on the size of your program and your staff and the ideas that you come up with. And in the community of practice, if you come up with a great system, it'd be nice for you to post that in there for others as well.
Yeah, and that's that's why I'm just sharing what we're doing. I'm not saying that might not fit your program.
Exactly.
It gives you a place to start thinking,
Absolutely.
because when we started this process, it just became more and more and more, and we're still tweaking it and improving it, and we have to practice it, and then we'll probably change it.
Right. Okay.
My motto is have a plan and then be prepared to change that plan.
Right. Thank you. And Janice, you asking if you can begin doing this, and does Cal need to know you're going virtual? No, Cal does not need to know you're going virtual. You may begin after this webinar. You've got all the tools and you can start testing according to TWC. It was required that you view this webinar, and we've got one this afternoon that's packed. The recording will be available next week, we hope midweek, and we'll let everyone know about that. But you can begin. Let me see if there's anything else. It is 11 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. And
Okay, there's a really, really important question here from Denise Johnson, though, about
Yes,
the Best Plus virtual guide. Do you need to purchase it? No.
No, I'll post it again. Here it is. It's right here, and it's there in the chat pod. I just sent it, but I will also put it in the community of practice. It's just guidance that they sent out, and I'll put all of the things I've been sharing and the documents from Glenda and Karen in the community of practice. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Glenda and Karen. This was absolutely and wonderful. Y'all always share the best information.